Okay.
All right, guys, we're back. So we're going to go ahead and start going over. We're going to try to cover two subsections. So SD-WAN rules and diagnostics. The SD-WAN rules we went over a lot within the lab day. So we'll cover a little bit quick, and it's a little repeating stuff from the firewall policy section. So I think you guys will be good. So you know, our objective today within this section is to go ahead and be able to identify SD-WAN rule matching criteria. And the reason why that's important is you are going to be asked a question about that on the exam. So you need to understand what that looks like. Okay. It's a little bit similar to, again, the if-then statement example I gave you whenever you're trying to identify firewall policies, but we'll go into that a little bit deeper. And also configuring dynamic link selection based on link quality. Okay, you guys went over a little bit of that previously in the previous section. Okay, so let's go ahead, right? Again, SD-WAN, software-defined wide area networking, right? What is its purpose? One of its purposes is to go ahead and optimize your optimize WAN usage, right? And so with that, right, we can go ahead and specify, with rules, which traffic, that we want to route with a specific interface, right? And so we can go ahead and configure, of course, uh, that interface that we're choosing that traffic to egress from or to leave based on latency, jitter, and packet loss, right? But it's a percentage value. So again, like I stated to you guys before, this is something you really have to do measurements on. You really have to understand routing to a T. Okay. For the exam, you will just have to understand what SD-WAN rules are. You will not have to configure what it is. You will not have to um, understand percentages to a T, but you will have to know what they are. Okay. Again, just like firewall policies, guys, they're evaluated the same, right? So the SD-WAN rule is going to say if then, right? It's going to say, hey, if this source IP address, this is going to this destination IP address, this port number, or this, ISDB address object has a destination, or this application has a destination for a specific set of users or no users at all, and for this type of service or TOS, right? Then send the traffic out of either this interface or that interface based on the measured SLA being latency, jitter, packet loss. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. All right. So you guys heard me say that you can set the destination as an ISDB. You guys learned about what ISDBs were in the previous videos, right? We can go ahead and set that as a destination, but we can also set an application, right? And so there's a section on the Fortigates to where they actually, within the policy and object section, where they identify applications, right? And how they do this, of course, is registered IP addresses and domains within ARIN, right? And so they register in their FortiGuard and they sent to your FortiGate. So, of course, as you guys know, you need an active subscription with FortiGate, active contract or what have you for FortiGuard subscription, so you can get updated list of these IPs, these subnets, these domains for a lot of these famous applications and internet services that are used day to day. Okay. But again, these can be used to tell which traffic can egress a specific link within your SD-WAN setup. Okay. Again, the big important thing here that's not listed on the slide is that you need to make sure your organization has an active FortiGuard subscription. Okay. All right. So, right, we spoke about, SLAs before. We spoke about performance SLAs and configured in the last section. Similar to performance SLA, we can go ahead and choose what's going to be the measuring stick, right? What's going to tell us that, hey, this is how I need you to direct traffic, right? And so we can, you know, set it to manual, right? That's one of the strategies, right? We can set it to best quality. We can set it to lower cost SLA. We can also set it to maximum bandwidth SLA, right? But for manual, we can go ahead and specify which interface we want to send traffic from. If we know exactly what we want to do, we don't want to leave it to software. We can tell it, hey, send the traffic out this way if it matches, okay? Or I'm going to put both interfaces there and use the interface with the lowest cost, what have you, right? You can set that, all right? Again, what you guys learned before, best quality, right? The Fortigate will select the interface with the best quality. How does it measure that best quality? This is the quality based on latency, jitter, packet loss, and a couple of other criteria that you can add in. So downstream, upstream, bandwidth, and maybe, of course, you get a little bit more higher on learning, your routing knowledge, and of course, a little bit about what a link looks like, what have you. You can set that up, right? For the exam, and I don't want you guys to get overwhelmed. For the exam, you just need to understand strategies. That's it, okay? SLA strategies for SD-WAN, right? Because they look the same from performance SLA whenever you set those up, okay? So just understand that you have these options available to you, okay? All right, and you guys know about lowest cost. Of course, you set that cost whenever you setting up the link, okay? So that is available to you, okay? All right, so we do need to take some time here and take a look at all of this, right? The one thing the FortiGate does, it follows a flow, right? Firewalls are stateful, right? Meaning that they track a session from the source all the way to the destination until that session is done, okay? And with the FortiGate following a flow, right, it's going to make sure that it keeps that session, right? How does this pertain to SD-WAN, right? SD-WAN, right? If, right, the SD-WAN technology says, okay, I'm gonna, based on the criteria within the SD-WAN rules, I'm gonna go ahead and send out this traffic out of, if we're looking at the slide, port 2, right? It has the lowest cost, it satisfies the SLA target requirements, and has an interface preference, right? And it's all good. I'm going to go ahead and send it out, right? But what the FortiGate is going to do, right? And this is going to give you a sneak peek of what the software is doing. It's going to check all of the interfaces, right? It's going to go ahead and check, all right, let me go ahead and check 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? I'm going to go ahead and check 4, right? The FortiGate's going to consider first 4, but eliminate it, right? Because again, it doesn't satisfy, right? It doesn't satisfy all the SLA target requirements, right? So what do we have left? We have 1, 2, and 3, okay? Port 3, it does satisfy the SLA target requirements, but look at the cost. The cost is 10, right? Even though the interface preference is 2, the cost is 10. It's not gonna work. We're gonna go ahead and eliminate it, okay? All right, port 1, right? The SLA target requirements does satisfy, right? The cost is low. The interface preference is 4. So, for example, if Makivia set this up, right? She may have set port 1, right, for the preference to be 4 for a reason. Maybe that's a slower link, but it's only a little bit slower than port 2 versus port 3, right? Port 3 and port 4 are probably just backup links. If God forbid, maybe it's a super hard down on your best 2 links, okay? And that leaves us to port 2, right? Port 2 goes ahead and satisfies the SLA target requirements, the cost, and of course, the interface preference. So this is what the FortiGate is doing. First, it's going to check the SLA targets. That is the first. Then the tiebreaker is going to be the cost. And the tiebreaker is going to be the interface preference. Okay? All right? That's the flow. Okay. maximizing bandwidth. All right, let's talk about this traffic. I don't think we talked about this in depth. Um, this feature, right? What it is, it's similar to load balancing, right? Um, so what happens, right? If that traffic matches things that we set within the SD-WAN rule, right? What's going to happen is that traffic is going to be load balanced among the members that you selected within the interface preference within this rule. I hope that makes sense. You have to select these members, okay? And with the selected members, they have to satisfy the SLA specification, okay? And that SLA, performance SLA that we may have set up on a different screen, we can set it for that to be the criteria matching, right? That's where you see the required SLA target, okay? For example, we look on the slide, right? Interfaces 1, 2, and 3 satisfy the SLA requirements. Interface 4 does not. In this case, traffic will be sent out of, in load balance, let me use the correct term, out of interfaces 1, 2, and 3. Okay, right? Even though we have cost set, right? And port 3 has a higher cost than port 2 and port 1, right? Cost is not taken into consideration whenever we're using the strategy to maximize bandwidth. Okay. All right. And again, I told you guys that SD-WAN rules are similar to firewall policies. And I didn't say that just because it's a if-then statement. It's actually basically an ACL, right? That's basically what firewall policies are, is access controllers, right? And what we're doing is we're giving access to certain traffic to leave certain links, right? And so, as you guys can see, right, because we're talking about SD-WAN, software-defined wide area networking, right? These are application-specific rules that are evaluated in the same way as firewall policies, every time. Same way as policy-based firewall policies, right? At the core, right? At the core of routing and switching, right? ACLs, okay? They have an implicit deny at the bottom. They have an implicit rule, as you guys can see, right, on the slide, right? There's always an implicit rule at the end, at the bottom of, right, or at the beginning of every firewall policy, right? You then add in access control entries to modify how you want traffic to flow, what you want to allow and what you don't want to allow, okay? Right? And so what does this implicit rule mean, right? So if none of the conditions based on what we created within our SD-WAN rules match, right, then that implicit rule is used, right? But this isn't a firewall policy. Again, this is an SD-WAN rule policy. So the implicit rule here is if none of the traffic that's being sent from something inside the network to outside the network, if it doesn't match any of the SD-WAN rules, it's just going to use the source IP and choose a link based on that. Okay. All right. All right. So just keep in mind, again, SD-WAN rules, they're built like firewall policies, but they function more so like policy routes, right? They're going to take precedence over any routes that are in the routing table. Okay. All right. So when it comes to policy routing, of course, the Fortigate checks the policy routes first before it checks the actual routing table, right? For in this case, right, let's say we have firewall policies, we have policy routes, and we have SD-WAN rules, SD-WAN policy routes, all on the same routing, all on the same Fortigate. Policy routes will still be checked first before SD-WAN policy routes and firewall policies. If it matches the policy routes first, that's the path it will take. If it doesn't match the policy routes, it'll check the SD-WAN policy routes. SD-WAN policy routes don't match, it will go ahead and use a firewall policy. Okay? With that being said, let's do a quick knowledge check. So question 1, what is an SD-WAN rule matching parameter for traffic sources? Is it A, user groups, or is it B, IPS signatures? Let me say that question again. what is an SD-WAN rule matching parameter for traffic sources? Is it A, user groups, or is it B, IPS signatures? An IPS signature being a UTM. You can unmute. Oh, no problem. No problem. Don, you're muted if you're trying to talk.
Oh, I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Was that question? Did you? I came in late. Was that? Did you go over that
I
before I
did.
came in?
I did. I did. You probably,
But
yeah, you probably came in the middle. It's okay. It's all right. Um,
but say it again. I could take an educated guess. I guess. What was the question
sure,
again?
sure. So what is an SD-WAN rule matching parameter for traffic sources? Is it A, user groups, or is it B, IPS signatures?
A.
A is correct. And so the reason why it is A, right? So one of the, I'll go ahead and just, I know you said you may have missed it. So we have here, right? SD-WAN policy route policy rules, right? They can match traffic based on, of course, source IP, destination IP, port number, ISDB address object, application object, and users and user groups. All right. An IPS signature has to do with a firewall policy because it's a UTM.
Okay. Yep.
Make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So, question 2. You can configure SD-WAN rules to choose the egress interface based on which parameter. Is it A, weight, or is it B, latency?
B, latency.
There we go. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and move to the next section, right? Which is SD-WAN diagnostics, right? And this should be the last section that we'll be done with SD-WAN, right? And I want you guys, of course, to be able to understand how to monitor SD-WAN link usage, monitor SD-WAN link quality status, and verify SD-WAN traffic routing. We touched it a little bit in the lab, but we didn't give it much justice. So we'll go ahead and jump on in, okay? So whenever we log into a Fortigate, we have a dashboard, right? Within that dashboard, we go into the network section, okay? And within the, and I apologize, let me take that back. Whenever we log into the Fortigate, we go into the, we get brought to the dashboard section, right? We need to go ahead and to actually see what our usage looks like, right? To look at the usage monitor, we need to go into the network section, then go to the SD-WAN section, right? And then we'll go to the SD-WAN dashboard, right? Within the SD-WAN configuration platform, right? And so what we'll see is we'll have, we'll go ahead and see how the traffic distribution is working based on member interfaces, right? We'll be able to see, the value, right? We'll be able to see, what's, the traffic being sent and received across all member interfaces, right? The bandwidth is going to be able to tell us how much bandwidth each interface is using as a result of sessions, right? Because the firewall is stateful, right? So they're based on sessions passing through them. And of course, my favorite word, sessions, we'll be able to see, right, within this SD-WAN dashboard, the number of sessions passing through for each interface. Why is this important, right? This is important, right? Because you'll be able to scale and see, do I need to uptick, right, my internet pipe, right? Do I need to add more bandwidth to it? Do I need to add less bandwidth to it, et cetera, right? Because everything is a cost in this world. So you need to make sure that you're monitoring this, helping maybe your company or yourself save money. If you have, SD-WAN set up where you have 2 links and you're optimizing your WAN links, okay? All right. You guys seen this before whenever you set this up, right? Link status monitoring is such a helpful tool. And of course, I know packet loss, latency, and jitter is such a tough topic to understand, but it gets easier over time, right? And luckily, the Fortigate gives you a great look of how that looks, right? And of course, they'll match up different links, what have you. So within the performance SLA, right? If we go into there, right, and if we're matching up, we set different servers and we're trying to match up the specific links, we can see, right, if we're looking at our slide, we can see, hey, 4.2.2.2.2 has a, has a lower latency than port 2, right? again, port 1, right, which is 4.2.2.2, has a lower jitter than 4.2.2.1. Okay. So we're able to see that, we're able to scale that. You guys are able to provide information and, of course, take that information down to, again, plan your wide area networking strategy, of course, your infrastructure, and how you want to direct that traffic for your SD-WAN deployment. Okay. Of course, my favorite section, because again, I love to troubleshoot, log and report, right? If we go to the event section and we select SD-WAN events, you can actually see what it's doing, right? We can see if the member status has changed, right? Member in SLA, we can see a few things. So it's very helpful. So again, we're talking about diagnostics. A lot of the things that are in the GUI can help you so much. Of course, there's things in the CLI that you can look up within the Fortinet communities. It'll show you, but you have a lot of tools that they provided you, especially in newer code, 7.2, that you can use to go ahead and troubleshoot, plan your infrastructure, and of course, provide the best service to your end users. Okay. Now, my favorite part, right? What we also can do is go ahead and use forward traffic logs to go ahead and take a look at see what traffic is leaving a specific link. Okay. The thing that I love, right, is that whenever we get to log and report, that destination interface is not going to be the SD-WAN interface. Although that we put our destination interface being the SD-WAN or the virtual WAN link within the firewall policies, the log and report is actually going to show you, hey, it went out port 1 or port 2. If they're part of the SD-WAN, if they're an SD-WAN member, that's up to you to know. But what I'm tracking is sessions, right? And I see which interface it left out of, right? Because I'm going to track that session and keep that session until it comes back to get back to the original source. Okay. We can also use a packet capture, right? To go ahead and we can look at this. We can go ahead and say, hey, we see the actual destination interfaces leaving. I can go ahead and go into the CLI or the GUI and say, hey, track this traffic. Let's see what's going on. I'm seeing a lot of denies going out of port 2. Let's go ahead and create a CLI packet capture to see what's going on. Okay, and we can use the verbosity levels 4 and 6 to look at the egress level just to confirm what we saw within the GUI. Okay. All right. With that being said, let's do one last knowledge check and we'll be done with the SD-WAN section. So question 1, which monitor should you use to monitor the session distribution across the SD-WAN member interfaces? Is it A, SD-WAN link state monitor, or is it B, SD-WAN usage monitor? Don, if you're talking, you're muted.
Oh, say the question one more time.
So the question is, which monitor should you use to monitor the session distribution across the SD-WAN member interfaces? Is it A, SD-WAN link status monitor, or is it B, SD-WAN usage monitor? This is a tough one.
I want to say A, but
Okay. Remember,
the term you said usage in there, the usage monitor term is kind of throwing me off. And
so think about the answers, right? One answer says link status monitor, and one answer says
usage. Okay,
usage monitor,
I'm
right?
gonna go
And
with B.
so, hold on, let's break this down.
Mhm.
And so the question is asking, how do we monitor session distribution? Doesn't say link status, it says session distribution across the SD-WAN member interface. So what does that tell you?
Usage is,
Okay,
yeah. So I'm gonna
there we
say
go.
B.
There we go. There we go. And I'm asking you this. I wanted to break it down in your mind because whenever you get to the exam, if all else fails, if you're unsure, you need to use some keywords within the question so you can choose the best answer.
Okay, gotcha.
Make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and go to question 2. Question 2 is, when verifying SD-WAN traffic routing with the CLI packet capture tool, which verbosity level should you use? Is it A, verbosity level 1, or is it B, verbosity level 4?
4.
There we go. Okay, with that being said, you guys are done with the SD-WAN section. Of course, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of things to review. Of course, everything within the PDF that I gave you guys, that study guide, of course, lab it up as much as possible. Okay, try to recreate some SD-WAN build outs that you guys may use within your environment, or you may have seen online. I think you guys should be good to go.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
All
guys.
right, man. No problem. Bye.